powerful enough. That power up in us. We are powerful enough. We got power up in us. Echoes of this love, let the silence go and talk. Deep up in our hearts, we are powerful enough. We got power all up in us. Call the echoes, echoes of love. Echoes of love. Echoes of love. Moving with the unicide, cause you know it's you and I think that we unify. The love and you'll know the I, cause the you you're looking for is the truth you hiding from. It's the peace inside of you, not the lies outside of you. Live in love and ignite. It's the flame of eternal life. It's the God that's inside. Live in love, live in light. It's the power deep inside. It's the echoes of this love. It's the echoes of this love. Let the silence talk in your heart, cause you know we are powerful enough. It's love, power in us, echoes of flame, eternally.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Echoes of the Eternal Flame. It's me and Nikki again. I believe this is episode 6, right?
7.
Oh, 7, yeah. We're on episode 7. I'm losing track of it, and this one is a special one. We will be talking about Kathara. Kathara healing. Okay, this is a big one. This could go for probably 10 episodes on its own. First thing I like to say is what Kathara stands for, right? So, Kathara means light, sound, one. And this is very important, right? Because this is the original template, blueprint, you can say, grid that everything else is layered upon. And there is also this other thing called Kabbalah out there, people know about, that has 10 spheres on the grid. That isn't quite Kathara, okay? Kathara has 12, while Kabbalah has 10. There are certain spots where the Kabbalah system, it takes from the Kathara, but it removes certain important key structures that create a finite life system, or let's say a parasitic system, right? So the Kathara is the original divine blueprint that has eternal life flowing perpetually. Kabbalah is the parasitic system that tries to feed off that perpetual eternal life system, right? So Kathara is very important because in our modern, it gives us a context of what healing is. It gives us the blueprint in which we should go through. It also explains what chakras are to detail. It explains the stations of the chakra, the stations of your Huva bodies, for example. That's not something we're going to get into, but that's an important one too. And not only that, I like to say it kind of teaches you this idea that sound, vibration precedes form. So tone precedes form, right? So there's geometries and Chris codes that embody the form that we have through tone, tonal resonance. There's also the again the Kabbalah aspect of it, right? The false grids that were overlaid over the Earth's morphogenetic field, right? This created the confusion and distortion in the spiritual system, right? And Kathara alignment enables our DNA activation, healing, and Krystic embodiment. Discernment is vital. Not all sacred geometries are sourced from eternal templates, right? That's why we're here with Kathara, to show you the eternal templates so you can see the sources of the geometries, right? Again, I'll say this, your discernment is vital. I'm not going to sit here and say, this was perfect, this is going to work for you, okay? Feel here, see, does it work? And we'll let Nikki take on more of the Keylontic Science discourse here today.
Yeah, so I think it's important to get into Keylontic Science before looking deeper into the Kathara. Kathara 1 is considered Kathara healing. And this is really timely because our last podcast recording was about the polarity drama. And that was a heavy episode because it's taking a look at a lot of the ugly things, the distortions, the reversals, the metatronic codes that are limiting us and reducing us. And it's really upsetting and frightening, but it doesn't have to be because we can take action by educating ourselves and being aware of who we really are and what's really possible here and how we can really change things, not only just with the planetary drama in a small scale way, but also in a larger way, your self healing. And so I think I want to get into Keylontic science just to have like a little bit of a background to the basis of matter, right? And where matter comes from. So, Keylontic science is a coined term from the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order of Freedom Teachings. It is a multidimensional science of light, sound, subconscious symbol codes, and base codes of matter. It is a science of morphogenetic fields and consciousness and creation. So, matter is a holographic illusion. A lot of people will support that saying, oh, look, we're in a hologram, or this isn't real, or we're in a video game. And it very much is similar to that. It's not that it's artificial or fake, but that it is a holographic illusion for sure. It's an expression of our experience, right? It's created by a refraction of energy particles that create light and sound as standing scalar waves. You will hear the term scalar waves frequently within the freedom teachings, and that is just like your standing pillar of unique encryption and expression that you're made of. So the Partiki grids create the unified field of matter underneath reality where matter form is built on. I will get into Partiki grids and what that is in a minute. So the standing waves oscillate and vibrate. They flash on and off, making it appear as though we're moving like a marquee at a fair. So that's how the best way that they describe it, the speakers, I would say, speaker 1 and 2, is that it looks like a marquee at a fair, right? So the lights of the wheel spinning make it look like the wheel is turning, but it's not. It's just that the lights are dancing in that way that make it appear as movement. So we're not actually like going anywhere in time and space. We are time and space movement, right? And standing scalar waves is what we are. I think it'll make more sense though as I continue on with what is a Partiki. So a Partiki is the smallest form of the smallest unit of energy consciousness that we have in the cosmos. Okay, it's an electrotonal small unit of energy that is consciousness in the cosmos. It emanates from the unici, right? From central God source. They form and sustain morphogenetic fields, the basic energy structure behind the manifest form that allows for a form to keep its shape, right? It groups up into Partiki units that create the morphogenetic field, right? So we are made up of these units of energy and consciousness. We are made up of Partiki. So then we have subparticles from Partiki. We have particum and Partiki. So particum is slower moving, contains half of the electrotonal of its twin, the Partiki. We are made of particum. We are in a particum dimensional structure. We are in a particum universe. The Partiki is pulsing twice as fast with more consciousness than the particum. Antiparticles of the particles we are composed of. So this is the antiparticle. So this is the parallel self and the parallel earth. It's proving that there's an existence of a parallel universe even. Okay. So what happens is these particles cycle. The Partiki units intersect within the 15 dimensional system and it undergoes fission and fusion. Fission breaking apart and fusion coming back together. It replicates itself, flashing on and off with its movement. And this happens so fast that, of course, our modern tools cannot capture it or see it, right? Because this is the smallest particle unit, remember. So this fusion and this flashing and spinning back into the morphogenetic field, fusing together, releases a burst of energy. So that's the flashing on and off, replicating itself. And so groups of these, composed of these, becomes a Partiki grid. It's okay. So the Partiki grid is a composed amount of Partiki units. They group together in complex patterns. And this first form is a strand that forms like the fibers of a carpet. to form a grid, okay? So that is our morphogenetic field. It is like a carpet grid of light and sound flashing on and off, a fusion, okay, that exists behind all matter forms of consciousness. So hopefully that's something that you can visualize. There are lots of wonderful pictures and diagrams that kind of support your visual understanding of what this looks like, in a 3D perspective, right? So the cosmos represents a massive Partiki grid. All things exist and are interconnected. All beings have personal Partiki grids as well. All right, so this is like the basics of Keylontic science and how things are formed into matter, right? And so then we have Keylons, which is the next step. And Keylons is a dimensionalized Partiki composite which forms in and around the Partiki grid. They form clusters called Keylons. They're crystalline structures of frozen light, the first step in transition from pure consciousness to pre-matter substance. They are composed of millions and millions of Partiki units within the grids. And then the Keylons form together to create complex groupings called Keylon codes. Further flush out the energy structure from which the particles will manifest in specialized patterns. And I know that this languaging can be a lot. These are all new key terms, and a lot of this is really accessible via frequency accretion, your continued repetitive, consistent practice with techniques that are allowing you to have access to this information to really understand it. So don't feel like impatient with this information. It will come again. I always return to it. I always pick up more. Like I've been saying all along, it's really an ever evolving process to really understand these basic concepts, which are not so basic for us. They can be quite complex. So the Keylon codes are living light and sound patterns. They link Keylons into the pre-matter where matter and solidity begins to happen. So we build complex forms of Keylon codes, which is more consciousness brought into form. So this is where we're getting form from, right? But in behind that form, of course, is these matters of consciousness that form these different groupings. Okay, just to make it really, really simple. And so that is exactly what we are. We are a form of Partiki units grouping together to form Keylons, which group together to form these Keylon codes, which bring matter and substance from the pre-matter. So that is essentially like really powerful technology that I think changes a great deal for you with regards to like, what are we, and the fact that we have a morphogenetic field. It is in a pre-matter state, but we do have access to it as though it is matter because we can create changes within our morphogenetic field, having an understanding of how powerful we are with our intention, with our knowledge and awareness. And Keylontic science was common knowledge in Lemurian Atlantean times, and they wanted us to forget. So this is the greatest gift that humanity has received in 20,000 years, I would say, to allow us to understand the basics of manifestation and the basics of our matter template and our pre-matter template so that we can begin to take control and empower ourselves with knowing that we have choices that we can make and we can change our thoughts and therefore we can change our morphogenetic field and therefore we can change reality as we see it, right? Because it is a holographic illusion. So hopefully that gives a good basis background for understanding more about Kathara grids, our 15-dimensional time matrix, and all the other things that we're about to get into. So I don't know if Natai, you're ready to launch into what it is that you're prepared to speak about.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
yeah.
um, I just wanted to add on a bit. There is a context to which healing takes place. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that earlier. And I would like to read some excerpts out of the handbook because there is a Kathara healing level 1 handbook, and it's pretty useful to have. One of the things that it says here is consciousness is energy, and energy is consciousness. Reality is thought creation. It's a thought construction. The core substance of the cosmos is consciousness. Thought is an attribute of consciousness and the filter through which consciousness manifests itself into the hologram of form. As Nikki said earlier, nothing is truly solid. All things are kind of composed of consciousness, and the apparent solidity is determined by your well, it says by the relationship between the consciousness observing the form and the consciousness of which the form is made. So how your consciousness is observing things, that is what it will appear as for you. Okay. And there's this flashing on and on sequence that our DNAs go through. Okay. There's a lot of terms here to know as well. right? So the primal substances, the Partiki, the manifestation template that Nikki was explaining earlier is made of Partiki that exists as an omnipolar point of fixed vibration. Partiki units are the smallest building blocks. So that is consciousness in a way. Partiki and consciousness are the same thing. Just in this is how God's source is, right? Infinite. So how many different ways could it possibly express itself? And they're in this omnipolar state, right? So the particum and the partiK that come from the partikai are masculine, feminine, as you would say, as we would say here. Okay. Um, in the bipolar states, two subvibrations of the tritonal standing waves of partikai units break down into two subunits, subtones called particum base tones and partiK overtones, interconnected units of bipolar radiation that form electromagnetic scalar standing waves, right? The third vibration of the tritone wave, the resonant tone, remains as the core vibration through which the polarized vibrational units of particum, partic will reunite through the internal fusion, right? So there's the left, and then there's the right, and then there's that center constant force. There's the neutral point, you can say. That's always there, the glue that holds those two together. The thing that is expressing that there's the coin and then there's the two halves of the coin, right? Are they separate from the coin? No, they're the same thing. The coin is the balanced expression of the two halves. If that analogy works, right? And then electromagnetic energy is created through the continual cycling of energy as the omnipolar antimatter tritone wave of sound vibration. It projects its energy into the bipolar particum and particle scalar waves of light radiation. Partikai, particle, particum units represent the phases that the primal substance energy passes through as it moves into and out of manifestation. The process by which Partiki units perpetually convert consciousness into bipolar light radiation and back into omnipolar sound vibration, tri-waves, is called Partiki phasing. Through perpetual cycles of Partiki phasing, matter units flash on through fission into bipolar particles and antiparticle manifestation built upon scalar waves of light radiation, then flash off through fusion into the omnipolar antimatter. Nikki gave us a pretty good breakdown of what that would look like. Things are just kind of appearing and disappearing, right? So there's also two different things I like to point out too: vibration and oscillation. Okay, so in the higher dimensional fields, let's say dimensions 8 to 15, you notice lower vibration, higher oscillation, and expanding field, higher frequency, shorter wavelength, slower electron spin, less density, and it would be more of an electric field. So like the top half of your Merkaba is electric, right? And then the bottom half of the Merkaba here would be magnetic. It would have a higher vibration, lower oscillation, contracting, lower frequency, longer wavelength, faster electron spin, more density, and magnetic. Okay, and a lot of you may be wondering what's the difference between lower and higher vibration. Lower vibration equals less energy holding in particle, which equals more energy expended from particle. Higher oscillation equals more expansion, faster flash rate of the particle, higher frequency of flash, more external movement, faster oscillation, shorter wavelength, slower electron spin around the nucleus, greater expansion of energy units, less density equals less magnetism, which equals more electric. So you may be wondering what this means. This would mean that your thoughts kind of work quicker. You would think, and something would come way faster than. So these are the high dimensional fields, just because of the way that consciousness is working there, and it's working with a higher oscillation rate, and there's less vibration there. That's kind of creating, let's say, this time lag from which your thoughts kind of use time to come. So you notice that in those higher planes, you think something, and something that what you're thinking comes, right? In the lower planes, you'd see a higher vibration, more energy holding in particle, sorry, not particle, right? As we said, we went earlier, particle is consciousness, right? So there's more energy kind of holding in your Partiki, which leads to less energy expanded from Partiki, which leads to lower oscillation, more contraction, slower flash rate of Partiki equals lower frequency of flash, more internal movement, slower oscillation equals longer wavelength, faster electron spin around the nucleus, greater compaction of energy units, greater density, greater magnetism, which equals to less electrical, right? So I kind of felt called to go down this to explain now into what the Metatronic tree of life, the difference between that and the eternal tree of life is, right? So if you were to look at a picture of the Metatronic tree of life, which is what everybody would think is the tree of life, right? Right. Well, that's what they teach is that that's not the tree of life. Okay. If you see it, it has a closed circular system, right? It's not energy moving in on itself. It's more like energy kind of being siphoned in and used over and over and over again. Not new energy circulating in and out of the system. It's more like a closed system, right? So if you look at a Kathara grid and you to look at, let's say, a Metatronic grid or tree of life, you'll notice the 12 and 8 centers of the key grid connection points are removed, right? And there's a false center at where the 5 would be. There's lines missing. The width is narrowed. The center one pulled downward. The height to width ratio is off. The vertical symmetry of the grid is broken. Not possible for Vecca quadrants to properly align, and not possible to overlay with parallel grids. So this is essentially saying this is a system that's closed off from this system, from that system, because the mathematics of it doesn't allow it to be able to overlay or to be able to, let's say, have interdimensional travel with other systems, right? So this is now a black hole system. Now this is a parasitic system. Now this is something that you got to watch out for, right? While if you look at the Kathara grid, right, the primary mathematical geometrical, sorry, I'm having a hard time with the word, organization of units of consciousness upon which Partiki units groups form morphogenetic scalar grids, right? The complete 12 tree grid with the Kathara centers and complete connection points and lines balanced, they'll have the perfect height to width ratio 2 to 1, which equals 2, right? Uh, it's perfect mathematically. If you look at it and you just look at the code, it allows for the full at-one-minute experience to manifest within, you know? It has a perfect overlay with all the other systems. If you look at it, it creates a perfect map. If you look at the Metatronic grid, you don't see the proper alignment of what the Vecca quadrants would look like. Because the PCM and the PKA grids cannot overlay, due to the misplacement of the centers. So, earlier when we speak about lower dimensional and higher dimensional, there's a reason why you will hear in a lot of New Age teaching, raise your vibration. Because there's a difference between vibration and oscillation. The higher your vibration are, the more energy is that's holding your consciousness back, okay? Your conscious expression of self. So that's why I wanted to go in that direction, and I'll let Nikki take over from here.
Yeah, that's fascinating, the whole concept behind this Metatronic tree of life and also the Metatronic flower of life, which we know is reversed mathematics and missing a lot of key components. And there is math behind this, right? Which is the
Mm-hmm.
interesting part of this whole journey within the freedom teachings is that a lot of what we're given is explained so clearly with mathematics. We can trust and rely on that, knowing that there's a mathematical component to why this Kabbalah tree of life is a reversal of what is natural and should be restored to back to its organic state. And Natai was explaining, we're missing lines, we're missing points. And this goes back to seeding one and seeding two of the human race, or the Terranesians, is what they were called. They blew up planets. They intentionally destroyed this primal structure, this divine structure, what was intended through, God stepping down and expressing itself intentionally to break it to own it. So it would never function right the same way. And what that means too is that we are going to have a very tough time getting out of this time matrix if we don't have access to certain parts of it because they've been blown up, destroyed, and they've been removed. So that's where the symbolic meaning of having some of these points removed and these lines removed from this Metatronic tree of life, that's what it's representing, this broken, fallen time matrix that we're in. And I just want to share that, we're born onto this earthly plane that has these reversals within her grids as well. It permeated not just our planet and our bodies, but also the galaxy that we're in, right? It's everywhere. And there was complex designs that showed us that this Kathara tree of life does connect very beautifully in with our bodies and the planetary biofeed interface system and into the solar system and into our galaxy in this time matrix that we're in. It's all interweaving and connected, right? And so if we're missing pieces of it, then we're disconnected, right? And that's what this fallen angelic race is intending, is that we are disconnected so that they can own this and be themselves a god of their own system, feeding on itself because it's no longer connected to source God anymore, right? But we have the ability to restore this within our own template, therefore restoring it into Earth's template. Because you see, we're born here as well distorted. We're sick. Our DNA is not activated. We have chakras that are not activated. We're not aware that we can actually repair and heal and restore to its natural, original Kathara grid template, and we can. And so that's why looking at the difference between the Kathara grid and the Metatronic tree of life is very important to look at, well, what's going on? And the mathematics behind it, well, the Fibonacci, spiral or golden mean ratio, the mathematics are wrong. It starts from 0 and then replicates itself, right? It starts from nothing. And then it steps on one below it to gain another going up. So it feeds on itself. The mathematics represent that dynamic. But with, the golden spiral that we use as a result of, Keylontic Science and the Kathara grid, that's representative of the Kathara grid, is starting from 1, right? And replicating itself as well from that. And so the beauty of that is the natural organic state. And that means that everything on this planet is produced from the Fibonacci, ratio. It is the reversal, is a present in all plant life matter and all animal matter here on this planet, as well as ourselves, as we know now that we can heal and bioregenerate that and repair, therefore, our DNA and come into more an organic template to heal ourselves and heal others. That's how powerful this information is. And I think I just want to give a bit more of a detail into, what are these Kathara centers? What are the Kathara lines, right? So like we said, Kathara, light, sound, 1, this is the true tree of life. It is a mathematical, geometrical organization of units of consciousness in which the Partiki units that I discussed before group to form the morphogenetic field scalar grids. It is the core level of scalar standing wave creation and energetic organization within and behind all dimensionalized systems. It is the core holographic template upon which the morphogenetic scalar wave blueprint and all other dimensions of form anatomy are built, right? So this is the basics. This is like the blueprint scaffolding before you build a building. This is what you need, right? All these points connecting so that you don't have any collapsed rooms. And that's one way of putting it, right? Because the Metatronic tree of life or the Kabbalah tree of life is showing you the collapsed rooms. It cannot support itself. It's not complete. It's also reversed, right? So basically, that's essentially what the Kathara grid is it is that structure that manifests our dimensionalization and consciousness upon which our blueprint is structured and built, right? So then within that, we have these, what are we going to call them? Kathara centers, right? These little dots that are within there are 12. because, and the 12 is a really key number you'll find throughout the MCEO Freedom Teachings because of how that fits into and a lot of templates that we have, like our DNA as well, right? But we have these Kathara centers that are holding the program for each dimension of our matter template. We have 12 dimensions in the 15-dimensional time matrix that hold the matter template. So therefore, that is represented by the Kathara centers for each dimension. They ground that consciousness within the holographic experience of manifestation, right? So they've cut off by imploding and blowing up and destroying the natural order of the Kathara centers and only allowing access for a certain amount of them, therefore giving us the inability to get out of this 50-dimensional time matrix. But however, we do have guardian races that are working really hard to ensure that we still have a chance to exit this time matrix, because this was not by our choices that this has inevitably fallen on, Earth's reality. And so it's really, really important that we learn about what's happening and we look at those less than favorable topics so that we can understand what's going on and therefore how we can personally fix it by starting with ourselves. It is very much a self-empowering program because of the information we're given so that we can fix it and bioregenerate ourselves, right? So I highly recommend that you focus and meditate on some of these graphs and charts that were given with Kathara 1. There's a colorized guide, which is wonderful. And revisit that because this is like the core basis for basic understanding of who you are and what you're capable of, how your DNA functions in relation to these dimensional spaces, how this all works, because it is all very succinct and complete. You'll never look elsewhere to try to understand yourself after looking here, right? Which is why we're choosing to talk about it today so that you do feel empowered after, a really challenging discussion from our previous podcast, right? And then we have these Kathara lines, and they're really important too. And as you know, in the Metatronic Tree of Life, a lot of those were removed. So the Kathara lines are the primary sequences of Partiki phasing that transmit the electrotonal programs held within the Kathara centers from one dimension to another, right? It's how it's all connected to keep the continual flow of consciousness circulating throughout the 15-dimensional levels of the morphogenetic field, right? So when functioning properly, the Kathara lines connect each harmonic and dimension of consciousness to the other and govern the synchronization of cycles of time within the dimensional fields and within the morphogenetic field, DNA, and body rhythms of dimensionalized forms. So, we may have heard us say on our podcast that you are multidimensional, you are composed of many dimensional spaces, you have access to them, they are natural, they are within your template, and yes, they have been deactivated, turned off, reversed, and locked from you with seals, but that you can, through the techniques given to us through the guardians, that you can actually access more of these dimensional spaces that you are composed of, right? And I guess that would bring us to the 15-dimensional time matrix primal structure.
Yeah.
I guess before we get into that, is there anything that you want to share, Natai, or anything you want to explain, or you can get right into it?
Yeah, the 15-dimensional time matrix structure. Big one, okay? I want people to understand that doesn't mean there's only 15 dimensions. That just means the structure of creation in which we are participating or co-creating in has 15 dimensions with 5 harmonic universes. Okay. So before anything, right, I would like to say the human anatomy is a 15-dimensional morphogenetic field, scalar grid structure composed of wave spectra with varying degrees of matter density and characteristics to the dimensional band, with which each level of the anatomy is stationed. The portions of our anatomy that appear solid are those stationed one dimension below our focus of consciousness / attention. All right. So first of all, I kind of want to go into what a dimension is, right? A dimension represents a full frequency band or repeating cyclical sequence of flashing on and off scalar points within a morphogenetic field. The morphogenetic field scalar grid structure of the dimension takes form of sets of 15-dimensional matrices. The 15 dimensions are grouped into 3 dimensions each, forming 5 sets of 3-dimensional reality fields called harmonic universes, right? That's where we get the 15 dimensions and the 5 harmonic universe, right? Because if you just do 15 divided by 5, you get the 3-dimensional bands in each of the harmonic universes, right? I like to also share there are certain teachings that were out there called Law of One teachings a couple of years ago that would describe densities, but they were more describing dimensions. They were not talking about densities, okay? So if you happen to be somebody from a paradigm of those teachings that say, oh, density 1, density 2, density... This they're talking about dimensions, okay? Densities are different than dimensions. I like to say that. Each dimension is composed of 12 sub-frequency bands, right? So if there's 15 dimensions, each dimension has a sub-frequency band. That means that's 180 sub-frequency bands that exist, right? And what they are is essentially shorter flashing on and off of scalar wave points, which exist as part of the longer cycle of the full dimensional frequency band. The Partiki in each dimension have specific rates of vibratory oscillation, contraction, and expansion of energy, right? So vibratory oscillation will mean how breath and exhale, inhale and exhale, right? So this determines the angular rotation of the particle spin, right? The angular axis upon which the particles will spin. There's a 90-degree shift of angular rotation of particle spin between each dimensional frequency band, and a 45-degree reverse shift between harmonic universes and sets of 3 dimensions / frequency band. Sometimes I find that interesting. A 90-degree rotation is like, if I spin in the right horizontal way, I could enter the other universe, hypothetically. Well, not really. If you follow the sciences, you could probably end up in another dimension if this planet wasn't that distorted and we spun in the right direction or held our energy in the right direction. And spinning includes your physical body, but you can also use your mind to spin yourself. Particles have different rates of vibratory oscillation and angles that allow multiple dimension reality fields to coexist within the same space while remaining perpetually invisible to each other. So the astral plane, right? Let's talk about dimension 4. That's in harmonic universe too. A lot of us do this thing called astral traveling or dream travel, right? But we're still in this body. That's because that dimension or universe is here, by the way. It's not there. It's just the rate at which we flash on and off our DNA determines what we experience. So when we're sleeping, actually, our DNA flashes on at a higher rate, which is interesting to think about because we're having a experience in a different universe almost. And now, speaking of the 15-dimensional universe, I would like to also go into the density type, which means the type of matter you would encounter in these different universes and dimensions. Okay. So again, we go back to this Partiki, Partiki, Particum, because those are the basic building blocks. So if it feels repetitive hearing that, that's because we're trying to get that in. The Partiki phasing, right? The expansion, right? And contraction of scalar points that governs the manifestation process, right? Scalar waves are standing fields that hold a certain rate of vibration and frequency to it, right? So for example, I know you can't see my background, but it's green, right? So green has a certain scalar wave pattern that makes it perpetually flash on as green to our eyes, okay? So um, density, biology, progression of matter density. Oh, sorry, I'm reading wrong notes here. Let me go back to the density types, right? So if we go to harmonic universe 1, where we are experiencing our reality, which is dimensional bands 1, 2, and 3, you will notice a carbon-based biology physical matter. Okay, that's this. We are carbon-based physical experience, at least as a physical being. We're not really physical, we just have that experience of it because this is where our consciousness is. Then there's harmonic universe 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6. This would be where what we call the soul is. Okay, our soul has a body in harmonic universe 2, and that body would be carbon silica based biology physical matter, right? But carbon silica means we have more crystalline structures in our system, more let's say crystal. I don't know how to describe it. Right? We would look ghost-like. not we would look like if you saw somebody from Harmonic Universe 2, you'd see them like you'd see me look like this, but I'd be like more pale and in the background and almost like a ghost, you know, if you ever happen to experience a Harmonic Universe 2 being. Harmonic Universe 3 is silica based biology, etheric matter, pure ethereal matter. Um, and this would be dimension 7, 8, 9. You know, if you were ever to meet a being from here, right, they would be a lot more ghost-like and a lot less like physical features noticeable. They would still kind of have like the humanoid structure like this, but they would be very much more difficult to say describe or label or symbolize, and this would be your oversoul level of identity. This is actually a very important one level of identity in our modern day. Our oversoul. Maybe I'll talk about that another time. For now, we'll move on to Harmonic Universe 4. This is the avatar level. This is where we get the crystalline liquid light based biology, pre-matter. Okay, so beings from this place in their native universe would have a biology that's, say, lyran, feline hominid, you know, cetaceans, you know, big whales. Just think of that. Think about that. But this is pre-matter liquid light. So, like, what it would look like really to us. If you've ever seen the Silver Surfer, or if you've ever seen any shows with like liquid that clear liquid and a being just forms out of it, that's kind of what they would look like, right? Because this is pre-matter. This is before, let's say, solidification, you know, or a concept of something being solid. So they would be very liquid light. Think of water. Like, think of a shining water pool, a pool of shining water. And now we move on to Harmonic Universe 5, from which the light comes from, sound, right? These are standing wave patterns, flame or fire. This is what it would look like. So eternal echoes of the eternal flame, right? A couple keynotes to point. Your Krystal's avatar level is stationed in Harmonic Universe, Dimension 12 in Harmonic Universe 4. The human template, right? The Krystal's template is there. So like you hear stories from like the past about, oh, this Christ that is saving you. Well, not really savior, but there is a truth there about the Christos and about the Christos, right? So when we use the sound and light technologies, combine the frequency signature and the code or the symbol of the idea, right? We collect these frequencies by oscillating consciousness into the domains or the dimension of our Krystic and cosmic and source self, right? So when we awaken to our 12D templates and our fifth, let's say, dimensional selves that allow our multidimensionality of all times in one time, that is the freedom that is talked about. That is when they say the Christos lifeline links us all to the higher God worlds and to source. When it's translated in books like the Bible, right, with a bit of distortion, it comes down and says the Christ is your savior and your link to God. It was referring simply to the fact that the inner Christos frequency, D12, right, frequency, aligns us aligns us through pre-matter template, liquid light template, that we all have the ability to carry these frequencies in our body. This divine blueprint links us to source. The planet has a crystal's frequency potential, so does the solar and galactic, but things have happened to the scalar templates on this planet over the past 25,500 years that the planet could not run D12 frequencies, which made it very vulnerable to infiltration from lower angelic kingdoms. We are here to restore those frequencies. This is Kathara healing in a nutshell. Restore the crystal's frequency in yourself, right?
Yes.
That because they were removed from our planet. Our bodies are the conduits that allow these frequencies to be restored. And the only way that, the conduit can remember is to remember through healing of light, sound, and one, knowing that's what it is. So The type of energy that we carry will depend on how much we know about our anatomy. If we don't know that we have chakras, that we have a scalar template, and we don't know about auric levels and how to keep them clear, we're not going to know. We're not going to know what to do with ourselves. We'll become easy prey for those living in D4 astral planes. They might be using our fields for something that you don't ever know they are using you for.
Mm.
We are
Yes.
frequency shields created from cosmic and source fields to protect us. Sorry, we use frequency shields, and we are, maybe that part too I'll add, from cosmic and source fields to protect us. The Eonian races and the founders races who are in inner Earth at this time use the codes and frequencies given to us by our founders races to activate the mathematical programs that are part of our planetary divine blueprint within ourselves. That's what we're supposed to do as well. Use this, right? When we use the sound and light technologies, combining the frequency, the signature code, we'll collect and we'll oscillate and we will become that crystals that links us back to the Unisci. Okay. So, yeah.
Mm. Well put. Holy, that's very succinct. That's perfect. Man, when it comes to that 15-dimensional time matrix map, like you could spend so much time on each dimension and what's going on. Like, we're incarnates here. So dimension one is your physical, dimension two is your emotional, and dimension three is your mental. And that's why we have such a manifestation challenge here because the mental and emotional are not in harmony in the way that we would expect. There's distortions within that, which means that it's blocking your mental intention to create and your emotional body not following suit with that properly. And there's like a miscommunication. And so you get into the nitty gritty of some of these dimensions and what's going on within each one. And I want to say that we should have a podcast on this specific topic, but I want to say that when you imbibe in entheogens or psychoactive, substances to chemically bypass your natural template order, and you go and you're seeing beings and you're having these incredible experiences when you're really high, what you're doing is you're reaching dimensional spaces that you're not prepared to hold, and you're going to crash your template. So that's why practitioners of the Krystic Freedom Teachings do not, gather in medicine circles, is what they're called,
Mhm.
for like these practices, because we have a natural way of getting there. And otherwise, if it's unnatural, you could hurt yourself. You can, yeah. Do you want to share something, Natai?
Yeah, as
I
somebody who's
triggered
been there,
something.
yeah, as somebody who's been there, who actually, in fact, let's say even, I guess, started a spiritual journey because of a psychedelic experience, like many of you guys, right? I can tell you from experience, yeah, there's infiltration that happens. And yeah, I happen to be lucky and have big, strong protection force around me, right? Codes that won't, as much as like I could have been distorted, right? I kind of had a little, like, I don't like to say an unfair advantage. It was an advantage entering in that space, and I wouldn't recommend it. Somebody who smoked pot for years, right? That, and once I started learning the freedom teachings, it's there. It's very obvious that there's something that is trying to watch and observe you and like mimic what an experience of the divine would be like, right? And I don't know too much about it. Too much about, let's say, deep about being a shaman or being some sort of, guru. But I can tell you from my experience, some of them are beautiful. But there's one thing that you will notice: you never take those experiences back with you. There is a reason, because beware of unearned wisdom. This isn't wisdom you gained. This is wisdom you're trying to. This isn't wisdom earned necessarily through true remembrance of self. It mimics remembrance of self. It mimics a spiritual experience. Honestly, the best function to me that psychedelics or weed or whatever would have, it reminds you there's a spiritual experience. It reminds you of the spiritual world if you're somebody who never knew that existed. But that's not your gateway to it. That's not the tool for it. That doesn't um give you the, let's say, coherent understanding of self,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't give you a vibrational harmonization. It mimics it. This goes into mimics, and echo distortions and false light, right? And AIs are all over psychedelic. Once I learned what an AI field is, oh my god, those fields are full of reverse templates, artificial intelligence that are
Mm-hmm.
literally trying to get you to run Kabbalah frequencies, dead light, not the Shalea living, right? These are Shona light beings. These are non-living beings. I'm telling you, as somebody who's gone so deep into these experiences,
Mm-hmm.
who's gone so deep, who's experienced them, who's had terrifying experiences, in fact, good ones, but realized that at some point, there was this some point where I was like, I guess even in the experience itself, I was told this: you don't need this. You know you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know you don't need this to experience yourself. You know this is actually putting a roadblock in between you and your experience of self because now it's all externalized. The biggest function is it externalizes you instead of saying, "Hey, I got my Kathara template here. Let me go to each different sphere and
Mm-hmm.
breathe." Right. One thing it also does is it plays with your breathing. Right. Your breathing is who you are in
Mm.
essence. How you breathe, your breath is you. Right. So this comes and starts to attack the most important thing, your breath. Changes how you breathe. Changes how what your DNA is like. Right. How I breathe is who I am. And how I breathe determines whether or not I'm running Partiki currents or if I'm running whatever the heck else is trying to be, whatever kind of thing is coming from external sources. So remember this: Kathara is about internal healing, not external gods, not external things that I need to do. It's
Yeah.
internal.
That's right.
It's
We need a whole
how am I
episode on this,
breathing?
Nate. We
Yeah,
need a whole episode,
yeah,
because we're both recovering from communities that supported
yeah,
use of external means of, escaping this harmonic universe one, which is not
yeah,
safe.
yeah.
We both have our own experiences. I have tons of stories as
Mhm,
well, having been on the medicine woman path
mhm,
before and sitting in many, many circles and ceremonies with various different
mhm,
medicines, you can call them, or substances, right? And experiencing them on a spiritual level and having so many experiences that, yeah, we should do an
mhm.
episode and share all these
Yeah.
stories for sure. But the point is that we're not here to house all 15 dimensional spaces in our body. Our body will implode. It can't handle it. We're here to heal whatever we can. If we can get up to 4.5, that's enough to get out of this time matrix. And that's the goal. Okay, not to be a Christos avatar, not to be Jeshua 12, which was the 12 dimensional. He was seated here intentionally to spread that
Mhm,
back into our DNA. And there's not many people that the Earth's planetary grids could not sustain that. So that's not the goal. But to be aware of it is important because when you're traversing this spiritual life, you will encounter channeled messages from a ninth dimensional avatar. Well,
Oversoul,
I am
not even
also a
Avatar.
ninth
Yeah,
dimensional
yeah,
being,
yeah.
so I don't need to listen to you. And the sixth dimensional angels, I'm a sixth dimensional angel. I have
Mhm,
that. And I will not be subservient to another, nor will I listen to one like a god, right? And worship one like a god. So it keeps you safe. And like we
mhm,
were saying before, when you pull up that 12D Christos avatar silver, pale silver light frequency, which is
mhm,
the main cornerstone of your techniques that you do, you are bringing up that matter template reality. And for 20,000 years, we only had Kundalini activation, right? Which is only like with only the central chakras are involved in that one. And it kind of leads me into the chakras. But before I get in there, there's another thing I want to speak about. Yes, we travel into the astral realm, like Nate was saying, the fourth dimension. We go there in our sleep, right? But that is also a place where we are targeted and we are faced with challenges,
yeah.
and it's very real. It's very real. Just because it isn't taking place with our incarnate body in dimension one going there, we are still going there. It's still part of us. But we need to practice protection because in the dream space, you can be harvested for your frequency, your energy. You can be, attacked. You can be hooked and corded, and you can have codes inserted into your system. The Asha Nadine spoke about like astral sex. It is not okay. It's not okay. And also, eating and drinking food in the astral realm is not okay. And so these are ways in which you are imbibing in practices that are harmful to your astral body, which can then trickle down into your incarnate body, right? So it's very real. It is very unsafe to pretend that dreams are not real. They are. And the minute that you have what feels like an attack dream or an unsafe dream, that's when you increase your protocols and definitely do the Maharic shielding technique before bed. So I wanted to just say that as a caveat because, knowing this information keeps you safe, not to scare you, but it keeps you safe. It lets you know what's going on, right? And so each dimensional space is also representative of a chakra. I just wanted to go into the chakras very briefly because
Yep.
for so long we were only given chakras 1 to 7. And the New Age
Mm-hmm.
spiritual community still postulates that we have seven embodied chakras. Well, we have more than that. We also have crystal seals, which are placed there intentionally so that, we could protect ourselves from bringing in way too much frequency when our bodies are not ready for it. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
buffer. Right? And each dimensional harmonic universe also has a buffer so that you can't just like shoot and skyrocket up to like dimension 12 like you do in plant medicine ceremonies and potentially harm yourself. Your body's not ready for it. You cannot contain that frequency. It could throw you into, being ill or unwell. And trust me when I say that I have seen in circles, in ceremonies, people being ill and unwell, which is never the intention of a practitioner, but it does happen. And now I know why, right? Anyways, so we have these 15 dimensional, 15 chakras within our body. Each chakra is representative of its dimension. Chakra one is at the base, right? It's red. We have chakra two. Everyone knows these. We're familiar with these. But what we're not typically familiar with is these morphogenetic chakras. We have 8 of them, right? So we have the thymus, which is morphogenetic chakra 8, the thalamus, which is 9, right? And so these, we have graphs and charts that show these, where they are. You can explore them. And then we have galactic ones that are outside of our body. They're still part of our morphogenetic field. We have ones that go right into Earth's core, okay? And then we have ones that go into the universe. We're connected to all of this. This is who we are. And they all have their own unique colors. They show where they are and they tell you exactly where they are so you can envision them. And they are ones that are dormant because they don't want you to have access to anything beyond seven dimensions, right? That's why they intentionally only gave us 7 and allowed us to have a piece of the truth, which resonates with everybody. Oh, I love my chakras. Yes, you do, but you have more than that, right? So there's like intentional ways in which we were given just snippets of information, distorted pieces of information, not the complete story. We resonated with it as truth, but there's more to it than that. And we're finally have been given this after, 20,000 years of not having access to it. And so that's why, we do these things. We have this podcast, we have our YouTube channel, we have our TikToks. We're trying to share as much as we can about this knowledge, and because it is the ultimate truth and it is wisdom that we have been lacking for far too long. And it's time to be empowered, right? And so know that each chakra is corresponding to each dimensional space. And once you activate these chakras, which what you do in the Maharic shielding technique, right? You bring your Hierophant symbol from your pineal all the way down into Earth's core, right? And then, of course, you do expand your meditation techniques into other techniques such as the Amaria buffer, where you're pulling in different frequencies, different colors, pale turquoise, pale yellow, and pale pink, right? And those are from other higher dimensional spaces. And this is what's called going vertical. We are going up and out with the ability of reactivating these pieces of our anatomy and having access then to these, what you can call auric layers or dimensional spaces that we have available to us. And this is the work. This is what we're here to do. This is continually practicing, releasing the seals, clearing, and it's like layers of an onion. You keep going as much as you can and maintain, maintain, maintain. Because as soon as you start peeling away those layers of that onion and opening up more and more and more, you're exuding more frequency. You're seen as a glowing light on the globe. And then sometimes life can get really shitty. I'm just gonna say the attacks happen, man, and it's like, what is happening to my life? This is a disaster. Why is
Mm-hmm.
everything so crappy? I can't believe I feel like I have no control over any of this nonsense. And that's what happens because you're exuding more frequency and you're turning on this light, which makes you seen. And then they'll try to make life miserable for you. So hopefully it'll divert you from that path as well. And some of it is your own shedding of your own ancestral past life karma layers, right? As you are bioregenerating. So there's lots to it, but that's what I want to say is just be aware that stay the course, even if things get really challenging and hard. Stay the course. Nate?
Yeah. So I was going over my notes a little bit here while you were speaking, and there's a couple things here I would like to touch up on, right? And it's the Universal Templar complex, right? And I'll begin from reading from the handbook, uh, the Kathara Healing Handbook. It is amazing, actually. If you guys happen to get a chance to grab it and read it, you'll get an even deeper understanding if you even listen to the podcast and then listen to the workshops. Actually, how I got introduced to the Freedom Teachings was Kathara Healing. Kathara Healing and listening to those workshops really were amazing. Um, so the thing I would like to say here is healing and primal fulfillment, and then I'll go back to the Templar. A rudimentary but operational understanding of the intrinsic structure of embodied personal manifestation template. There's the level 1 personal Kathara 12 tree grid. That's the one me and Nikki were talking about. Then there's level 2 scalar shields, hoover bodies, and signet star seed and crystal seals. Nikki was mentioning about the seals earlier. Level 2, we're not going to go too deep into because, again, that's level 2. We're on level 1 here. And then there's level 3, the dyadic points. And its relationship to the Universal Templar complex, which allows the embodied human consciousness the opportunity to progress, participate within the process of conscious evolution. So Kathara is actually the tool in which allows you to participate in your own evolution. Okay. And the intentional this is also for intentional restoration of the organic imprint for health. All manifest dis-ease or disease, as we call it, but it's really just dis-ease, originates through distortions in the electrotonal scalar wave programs. What are the electrotonal scalar wave programs? Those are the Partiki grids. So the electrotonal scalar wave programs of the Kathara grid, scalar shields, and manifestation template, right? This leads to once the distortions are cleared out, right? This will lead to lasting healing rather than suppression and transference of the disease to other embodied systems and distortions within the personal manifestation template. The need to be realigned from causal Kathara grid level through regenesis of primal order with an organic imprint for health. So if you can get your Kathara grid back in line with how it originally was set to be, all your 12 spheres, you realize they're active, they're operating with you, you were able to have a communication with them, get them back in proper order, and regenerate them. The manifestation template healing therapeutics based upon the knowledge of the Kathara simultaneously work to restore the natural intended primal order and function of the human body and consciousness while expediting your evolutionary process, merging your stations of identity through time to facilitate fulfillment of the organic primal purpose. The primal purpose of human evolution is to achieve transmutational, dimensional ascension, and co-creative mastery over the personal, external consciousness, and internal Templar complex within the holographic fields of the time matrix. Through fulfillment of primal purpose, humanity will regain, the primal condition of consciousness at one mint with the universe, central source of creation, or God. This is all to say, right? If you take your time, and I'll speak about this, the transduction sequence, right, after this. But if you take your time to really know self, if you take your time to align self back with self, you'll be here, but you'll have a conversation with yourself all the time in your head, in your cells, in your toes, in your fingers, in your breath. You'll always be communicating with those identities stationed there. Your soul, one of many. Your oversoul, one of many. Your avatar, one of many. Back to your Rishi, back to God Source, back to the next expansion, back, and so on and so forth, right? So the basic transduction sequence of consciousness into biological form. This is how God steps itself down, right? So consciousness goes to Partiki units, right? And consciousness is always is, will be, and as it is forever. Consciousness is and is pure isness and is always will be, right? And can never not be, but is also not. It's God. This turns to Partiki units, which turn to the scalar, the Kathara grid levels, level 1, 2, and 3, to Partiki grids, to morphogenetic fields, to Merkaba fields, right? Merkaba fields are sets of counter-rotating electromagnetic spirals of energy, repeating scalar wave flashes and Partiki phasing sequences that run down dimensions and harmonic universes. So notice that your Merkaba field is counter-rotating electromagnetic spirals of energy. So a lot of Merkaba technologies kind of show you similar rotating. That's false. That is to create a closed energetic system, a fake Merkaba. The real Merkaba has the electric going one way. I don't know which way, but I know that they spin in different directions, right? Right? And then what does this lead to? Your Merkaba field leads to the DNA, RNA imprint to the bioenergetic auric field to chakras, to the natal capsule. This is a tissue-like capsule that forms around the third-dimensional scalar grid of the harmonic universe 1 morphogenetic body. Then this, right, as the transduction sequence keeps going, right, from consciousness to biological form, right, this is what we're talking about. DNA and RNA manifest to the nadis, the energetic rejuvenants that feed energy from the natal capsule into the central nervous system and molecular structure, to the nuclear core, to the CNS, metabolic / biological rhythms, brain chemicals, and hormones, organs, and tissues. So this is kind of how you start to create yourself, you know? I think that's where I'll end here, my little tangent. Actually, there's three things I want to touch on: the unified field of consciousness and energy, the Kathara grid, and the interwoven morphogenetic fields. So first, we'll talk about the unified field of consciousness energy. The scalar standing wave grids that make up dimensionalized morphogenetic fields represent the intrinsic structure of the cosmic unified field of energy, within which all things exist. Energy is consciousness, consciousness is energy. Consciousness energy cannot be created or destroyed. It simply changes form while simultaneously always remaining always the same, the eternal unified field of consciousness. Isn't that weird? Think about it. Constantly changing, but always being the same. Just wrapping my mind around it. So it's like, I am Natai, but I'm not, because I'm also something else at the same time, which is weird, but it's also cool. I should stop saying weird. I think it's actually more beautiful than anything. It's amazing, actually. It's a miracle, everything in life, right? It really is. Think about it. How can you're being still, but also having this experience, or at least a perception of an experience, right? It feels very real, and it is, because you are real.
Yeah.
Now, the Kathara grid, all forms of consciousness and perceivable manifest forms derive their individuation within the unified field through the structure of their individuated morphogenetic field. Through having a much diversification within the geometrical mathematical programs that form individuality within like patterns, the core of all identity and manifest form is the same, the intrinsic structure of the Kathara grid, the core holographic template of dimensionalization upon which morphogenetic fields are formed. So guess what? The ants use the Kathara grid. Eternal living life, let's say, the animals there will use the Kathara grid. You use the Kathara grid. The molecules in the air use the Kathara grid. Every single thing is built off that basic mathematical structure. So the important numbers are 15, 12, and 5, okay? And 3, right? All three of those, right? And you'll notice something. All those numbers are derived from 3, multiples of 3. 15, 12, well, not really 5, I guess. But you get what I'm trying to say. The 3, the Trinity is very important in God world. Trinity, 3. Things come in threes, right? Because you need the masculine, the feminine to create the child, right? God's source knows this. I need to be both male and female. Then there's the child, and then the child's innocence is a reflection of the innocence of self that I always am. So you are actually made in pure love and innocence of God. Like if you really think about it, you are pure innocence. You are the child of you are the dream child that was created in the mind of the source. All of us were dream children. We were all imagined to be dream children. And guess what? The parent always wants the child to be equal, right? Or if not greater, at least a good parent would want to for us to express just as much as God is, okay? And now we'll talk about the interwoven morphogenetic field, or you can say spheres within spheres, right? The spheres within spheres, right? The interwoven morphogenetic field is the inherent structure of the interwoven Kathara grids that form spherical dimensionalized morphogenetic fields within which consciousness can experience the holographic projection of manifest reality, space-time matter externalization. The spherical morphogenetic structures of the microcosm exist within the greater spherical morphogenetic fields of the macrocosm, forming a system of conscious energetic spheres within spheres that represent the interwoven morphogenetic fields of cosmic unified fields of consciousness. Okay? So if you really look at it, us humans are a microcosm of the larger macrocosm of let's say human expression within a Catharic template, right? So we are like the smaller version of what our avatars would be expressing. We're the microcosm. We think we're big. Guess what? We're really small, but we're also everything at the same time. So it's amazing to see that, right? So the microcosm within the macrocosm, the individual within the species, within the planetary, within the galactic, within the universal, within the cosmic, within the infinite and the eternal. I'll say that again. The microcosm within the macrocosm, the individual, you, within the species, human, Tyrannissium, Orpheum, or in some cases, other ones, right? Within the planetary, Mama Earth, Mama Gaia, Mama Tara, actually first, then Mama Gaia, Mama Armentana, right? And then back to the within the galactic, right? Because here's the thing: once we start to wake up, we're gonna realize we're not alone, and there's a lot of other beings out there that want us to co-create with them. We're part of that family too. And then from that to the cosmic, to the infinite, to the eternal. And that's where I will leave my tangent. I know I was on for a little bit there. And then at the end, I'll give a highlights here of what we kind of covered as well.
Wonderful. This is the most comprehensive, sophisticated, intelligence system that we have today. And oh, I'm so satisfied with the information I find within the teachings.
Mhm.
I find that I'm no longer looking out there. I'm no longer seeking the answers to the questions that I have unanswered. I'm just so grateful for these teachings, and they give so much and they keep giving. And in the next podcast, hopefully we have a chance to record an episode discussing, why we only look at certain areas of the teachings and we don't look at other areas of the teachings. Not that we it's just by choice, really, in how we're feeling. And I get so much satisfaction just from the early teachings. I really do.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to discuss why that is and what is happening in the, say, later period of time within the teachings. So I think that we would like to dive into that. But just to kind of give you some context around why certain Krista communities are quite divided and why Krista communities are very specific as to what they're there to achieve and what they're there to dispense out there for content and information, and being picky and choosy about that and what's going on with that. Because if you are traversing this path, you may have noticed, you may have encountered this. And so hopefully we can shed some light onto that and what is happening there. But I have to say that I do feel so fulfilled and complete with like my journey with the freedom teaching so far. And
Mhm.
it's been years. It's been years, and I am lifelong. That's what I know for sure. And it's based on this basic information here, which is heavily layered and complex and so beautiful
Mhm.
that you never, I don't know, like you could meditate on it and still feel enriched just by looking at it, looking at the graphs and charts and this detailed information, the stair-step creation model, how we're all interconnected and interwoven, and the geometry behind that. Like it's just like amazing. Anyway, I guess I'll stop like, I don't know, bragging. I
Yeah,
don't want to say I'm bragging, but I'm just so happy and I feel so blessed. And I guess
sharing your joy.
not
Yeah.
proud, but just fulfilled, and I just want to really emphasize that's how I feel when I am learning this material, right? And I hope that listeners feel the same as well, and that this episode fills in those gaps and holes if you do
Mhm.
have any. Yeah,
Mhm.
I feel complete.
Yeah, and grateful. And we're grateful to all of you guys here. Real quick before we end this, I want to go into highlights, right? Takeaways, when you take home, because there's a lot of material. Sometimes I don't even know where the material comes from because I'll be talking and then I'll be talking and enter a flow state, and then like we're going from there, right? My higher parts are now dropping down and say, okay, drop this here, share this, share this. A couple things here to note. The holographic template, that's a big one, right? That's what we covered, right? External reality is a holographic projection. Perception of solidity and externalization is determined by the oscillation rates between the dimensionalized units of consciousness. What are those dimensionalized units, guys? Partiki, partike, particum. Dimensionalized units of consciousness form frequency bands that exist in specific relationships to each other. We perceive as solid the frequency band that exists one full dimensional band below the frequencies in which our consciousness is stationed. So our consciousness is stationed in, I believe, the third dimension, if I'm not mistaken. And what we experience as physical is actually D2, if I'm not, because we perceive as solid a full dimension below which are from. So if you look at the world, actually everything is just a bunch of 2D planes, really. That's what we're seeing, just layered upon each other. And it's kind of cool when you look at it from that let's say physics angle. Dimensionalization creates the structure through which consciousness can perceive the hologram of externalization. So for a god to know God, it kind of has to create this hologram of it being external. So secret, you're God. In a different form, but that's a secret. You are. We all are God, experiencing God, in different ways. We just don't take that name specifically. We have our names, you know, and that which is source has no name. By the way, precedes even tone. Okay, just like how tone precedes form from us, sound precedes light. God precedes sound. Okay, it's brain. Anyways, the human body is a hologram built upon a holographic template of units of consciousness structured into scalar standing wave grids that represent living morphogenetic field, a blueprint upon which matter and dimensionalized consciousness manifests on itself. So that's the holographic template. Recap. The structure of dimensions. Recap. The unified field is built upon dimensionalized sets of scalar wavepoints and wave strata formed of units of consciousness that form the basis of energetic relationships through which the hologram of manifestation can be perceived. The human body is a construct of conscious energy built upon a 15-dimensional anatomy of dimensionalized scalar grids. Perceived physicality emerges through the perceptual lens of dimensionalization. Again, perceptual lens, which provides the picture of seemingly manifest particles, atoms, molecules, and physical systems. Understanding the nature and structure of the holographic reality allows us to understand the foundations upon which the body is built and the context within which healing must occur. Scalar waves are standing wave points that emanate out of fixed points of sound, electrotonal Partiki units, which form scalar grid morphogenetics templates that house consciousness in dimensionalization for experience of manifest reality. Scalar grids are created through Partiki phasing. I'm not sure if it was mentioned earlier, sound predates light. It comes before light. Not that anything comes before other in the sense of how time works up there, but if we were to kind of put a timeline on it, sound, light, then etheric matter, or sound pre-liquid light. I'm not sure. It works down that way. Sound first and then down. Partiki phasing is the process of internal fission and expansion and internal fission and fusion, right? Fission is the expansion, fusion is the contraction. Characteristics of Partiki units through which the units perpetually break apart and replicate through fission and reemerge through fusion create flashing on and off. So when it expands and contracts is where we get the flash sequences, the flash line sequences that determines the intrinsic orientation of the consciousness within the scalar grids composing morphogenetic fields. Dimensions are scalar grids of consciousness composed of interwoven layers of scalar waves with varying flash line sequences or frequency bands. Dimensions are frequency bands or Partiki wave spectra that exit within specific relationship to each other to form the template of the holographic reality. Frequency bands are synchronized repeating flash line sequences of Partiki phasing. It gives the appearance of manifestation movement of wave spectra within dimensional scalar grid subfrequency band and are portions of the flashline sequence that make up the whole dimensional band. The frequency of a dimensional band is determined by the vibratory oscillation rate of the Partiki units that make up the dimensional scalar grids. And I'll stop there because the recap might end up taking much longer, but I
And
think
that's a lot
that's
of information in one go.
yeah. So if you guys would like to know where I'm reading this personally, it's straight out of the handbook. So yeah,
Mhm.
you know. Remember this: we are flashing on at a certain vibratory oscillation rate. That's why we look 3D and we see things in we see things in 3D.
Mhm.
What Kathara healing does is allow us to be able to perceive, let's say, other flash on and flash off sequences of Partiki. Partiki is God, some energy, conscious energy. It's consciousness. So everything that we communicate with is aware. So how we speak with it determines what it gives back to us. In, let's say, layman's terms, right? How I speak to myself will determine how I feel and think about myself, what I perceive about myself, and most importantly, what I'm creating for myself. It's true, there are beings that have tried to mess with us for a while, but there's a reason that their whole thing is to make you forget who you are. Because if you remember, fearlessly, one of our attitudes, fearlessness, right? That's an important one nowadays. You need to not have fear, okay? Because there will be things coming out of you that could be used. Remember that. So, keep yourself, um,
Awake, aware, and able.
yeah, and remember the context of which, why healing, and how it occurs, right?
Mhm.
Remember, the one thing you want to remember is flash on, flash off, right? And Ashiana's old flash on and flash on, right? Flash off. Okay. 15-dimensional time matrix, 5 harmonic universes, right? So there's matter, pre-matter, or semi-etheric matter, liquid light, and then antimatter. So yeah. Thank you guys. We'll definitely have a Kathara 2 podcast coming out too. Okay. Yeah.
Blessings. Love to you all.
Yeah. Blessings to everyone.
Powerful enough, it's love, power in us, echoes of flame, eternally.